The rain had just begun to fall over the tall glass towers of the city when Daniel Carter stepped off the crowded bus with his small daughter Lily holding tightly onto his hand. The evening traffic roared past them, headlights reflecting across the wet streets like scattered diamonds, but Daniel barely noticed. His mind was heavy with worry, the kind that presses on your chest when you're trying to be strong for someone who depends on you. Lily looked up at him with innocent eyes and a bright smile that somehow made the whole world feel lighter. She was only 6 years old, but to Daniel she was the entire reason he kept moving forward. "Daddy, are you tired?" Lily asked softly as they walked toward the large corporate building that towered over the street like a monument to success. Daniel forced a smile. "Not when I'm with you, princess." The truth was, he was exhausted. For 3 years Daniel had been raising Lily alone after his wife, Emma, passed away unexpectedly. She had been his partner, his best friend, and the glue that held their small family together. Losing her felt like losing half of himself. But life doesn't stop for grief, and Daniel knew Lily still needed laughter, school lunches, bedtime stories, and someone to remind her that everything would be okay. Daniel had once been a talented software engineer with big dreams, but after Emma's death, he had to quit his stable job to take care of Lily. Since then, life had been a series of small jobs, late nights, and quiet sacrifices. Tonight, however, felt different. He had received a message earlier that day asking him to come to the headquarters of Carter Industries, one of the largest technology companies in the country. The message said the CEO himself wanted to meet him regarding an old project Daniel had worked on years ago. Daniel still didn't understand why. He adjusted Lily's small pink backpack on her shoulders and walked into the bright lobby of the skyscraper. Inside, everything was polished marble and glass. Businessmen hurried past in expensive suits. Receptionists answered phones with professional smiles. For a moment Daniel felt like he didn't belong here anymore, but Lily tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, this place is huge." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, it is." The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" Daniel cleared his throat. "Yes, I'm Daniel Carter. I was asked to meet the CEO." The receptionist's eyes widened slightly before she quickly made a call. Moments later, a security guard appeared. "Mr. Carter, please follow me." Daniel exchanged a confused glance with Lily before following the guard to a private elevator that moved silently up the building. Floor after floor passed until they finally reached the very top. The doors opened into a quiet hallway lined with modern art and tall windows overlooking the entire city. At the end of the hallway was a large wooden door. The guard knocked once. "Come in," a deep voice said from inside. Daniel stepped into the office. The room was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the storm rolling across the skyline. Behind a sleek desk stood a tall man in an expensive dark suit. This was Jonathan Carter, the CEO. A man known in business magazines as a visionary genius who built a $1 billion empire from nothing. But when Jonathan Carter looked up and saw Daniel and Lily standing there, something strange happened. His expression froze. He stared at Lily, not just a quick glance, a long, stunned stare as if he had just seen something impossible. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Sir," Jonathan slowly walked around the desk. He kept staring at Lily. The little girl looked up at him curiously. Then Jonathan spoke the words that would change everything. "Why does your daughter look like me?" The question hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Daniel blinked in confusion. "What?" Jonathan's voice grew sharper. "I asked you a question. Why does your daughter look exactly like me?" Daniel looked down at Lily, then back at the CEO. He had no idea what this man was talking about. But Jonathan Carter's eyes were intense now, filled with suspicion and something else, something almost like fear. Lily tilted her head. "Mister, do I know you?" Jonathan's hands tightened. Daniel stepped protectively in front of his daughter. "Sir, with all due respect, I think there's some misunderstanding here." But Jonathan shook his head slowly. "No, no misunderstanding. He walked closer, studying Lily's face carefully, her eyes, her smile, even the shape of her dimples. They were painfully familiar. Jonathan whispered to himself, This can't be possible." Daniel finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Sir, Lily is my daughter. I raised her since the day she was born." Jonathan turned sharply, and her mother. The question hit Daniel like a sudden gust of cold wind. He hesitated before answering. Her name was Emma. The moment Jonathan heard the name, his face went pale. For a long moment no one spoke. Rain hammered against the tall windows behind them. Then Jonathan slowly sat down in his chair. "Emma," he repeated the name as if it were a ghost from the past. Daniel frowned. "You knew her?" Jonathan looked up with eyes full of shock. Yes, the word landed like a stone in a still lake. Daniel felt a strange tension building in the room. Jonathan leaned back, staring at Lily again. What was Emma's full name? Emma Whitmore Carter. Daniel replied. Jonathan closed his eyes. Emma Whitmore, the name he had tried to forget for years. The woman he once loved before ambition, pride, and mistakes tore them apart. The woman who disappeared from his life without explanation. Jonathan's voice grew quieter. When did she pass away? 3 years ago, Daniel said gently. Silence filled the office again. Lily looked between the two men, confused. Daddy, why does this man look sad? Daniel knelt beside her. It's okay, sweetheart. But Jonathan suddenly stood up again. He looked directly at Daniel. How old is she? 6. Jonathan did the math in his head. 6 years since Emma disappeared from his life. 6 years since the biggest regret of his life. His heart began to race. Could it be possible? Could Lily be? No, that was impossible. Yet the resemblance was undeniable. Jonathan rubbed his forehead. Daniel, I need to ask you something important. Daniel folded his arms. I'm listening. Jonathan looked at Lily again. Did Emma ever tell you about her past? Daniel thought for a moment. Not much. She said she left a complicated life behind. Jonathan nodded slowly. That sounded exactly like Emma. But Daniel suddenly asked a question that shifted the moment. Sir, why did you ask me to come here? Jonathan walked back to his desk and picked up a file. Because 5 years ago, you designed a piece of software that eventually became the foundation of this company's most successful system. Daniel blinked. You mean the prototype I built when I worked here? Jonathan nodded. You were never credited for it, but I recently discovered the truth. Daniel was stunned. That project had once been his dream before life took everything in a different direction. Jonathan looked at him carefully. You deserved recognition and more. But then he looked at Lily again, and the same question returned to his mind like an echo. Why does your daughter look like me? The storm outside grew louder, and deep down Jonathan Carter felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope, or maybe fear, because if his suspicion was true, then the biggest mistake of his life was standing right in front of him. And the answer Daniel would give next might change all 3 of their lives forever. Daniel looked directly at the CEO and finally spoke. Sir, the reason Lily looks like you. He paused, then gave the reply that would shake the entire room. But before we reveal what Daniel said and the shocking truth behind Lily's past, the room felt heavier than before, as if the storm outside had somehow entered the office and settled into the silence between the 3 of them. Daniel looked at Jonathan Carter with steady eyes, while Lily quietly played with the zipper on her small backpack, unaware that the next few minutes could change her life forever. Jonathan's question still hung in the air like an unfinished sentence. Why does your daughter look like me? Daniel slowly stood up straight, taking a deep breath before answering. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of years of memories. Sir, the reason Lily looks like you is because her mother once told me there was someone from her past who might one day come looking for answers. Jonathan's heart skipped. What does that mean? Daniel hesitated for a moment, as if deciding whether this man deserved the truth. Then he said quietly, Emma told me that before she met me, She had been in love with someone powerful, someone who chose his career over her. Jonathan's face tightened as if each word was a mirror reflecting his past mistakes. Daniel continued. She never said his name. She only said that if he ever came back, it would mean he finally understood what really mattered. The CEO felt the ground beneath his confidence begin to crack. He walked slowly toward the window, staring out at the stormy skyline. For years he had built an empire, believing success would fill the emptiness inside him. Yet standing there now, he realized that the one thing he had truly wanted had slipped away long ago. "Daniel," Jonathan said quietly, "when Emma left, she never told me she was pregnant." Daniel nodded slowly. "She didn't know at first." Jonathan turned around sharply. "What?" Daniel placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. "Emma discovered she was pregnant after she had already walked away from your life. By then, she had decided something important." Jonathan's voice trembled slightly. "What decision?" Daniel's answer came without hesitation. That Lily deserved a peaceful life, not one filled with the conflicts of your world. The words were not angry or bitter. They were simply honest. Jonathan walked closer, his eyes locked on Lily's face again. Now that the truth was hovering near the surface, he could see the resemblance more clearly than ever. The same eyes, the same smile, even the way she tilted her head when she was curious. His chest tightened. "So you knew?" he asked Daniel. Daniel nodded. "Yes." Jonathan looked stunned. "And you still raised her as your own?" Daniel's expression softened. "Sir, being a father isn't about blood. It's about love, sacrifice, and showing up every single day." Those words landed harder than any accusation ever could. Jonathan Carter, the billionaire CEO admired by the business world, suddenly felt small in front of a man who had quietly carried responsibilities he himself had never faced. Lily looked up at them both, sensing the seriousness in the room. "Daddy, why are you talking about Mommy?" Daniel knelt beside her again and gently brushed her hair back. "Because Mommy loved you very much." Jonathan's voice came out softly. "Can I talk to her?" Daniel studied him for a moment. The CEO confident image was gone. In its place was a man who looked nervous, almost fragile. Finally, Daniel nodded. Jonathan crouched down so he was eye level with Lily. For a moment he didn't know what to say. Business meetings, negotiations, billion-dollar deals, those were easy for him. But talking to a 6-year-old girl who might be his daughter was something entirely different. Lily studied him curiously. "Mister, why do you keep looking at me like that?" Jonathan swallowed. "Because you remind me of someone I used to love very much." Lily smiled gently. "You mean my mommy?" Jonathan nodded slowly. "Yes." Lily's eyes brightened. "Everyone says I look like her." Jonathan felt a sting behind his eyes. "You do," she thought for a moment, then asked innocently, "Were you friends with my mommy?" The question froze the room. Jonathan glanced at Daniel, unsure how much he should say. Daniel gave a small nod, silently allowing him to answer. Jonathan looked back at Lily. "Yes, we were friends a long time ago." Lily seemed satisfied with that answer. "Then you must be a good person. Mommy only liked good people." Those simple words hit Jonathan harder than any business failure ever had. For years he had convinced himself that success justified the choices he made. But hearing the trust in Lily's voice forced him to face a painful truth. Emma had believed in goodness, while he had chosen ambition. Daniel stood up and addressed Jonathan again. Emma never wanted Lily to grow up feeling like she was part of a complicated past. She wanted her childhood to be simple, happy. Jonathan nodded slowly. "Did she ever talk about me?" Daniel paused before answering honestly. "Only once." Jonathan waited. "She said you weren't a bad man, just a man who was chasing the wrong dream." The CEO looked down at the floor, absorbing the words in silence. Years of board meetings, headlines, awards, and billion-dollar Dollar deals suddenly felt meaningless compared to the quiet truth spoken by a woman who was no longer alive. Finally, Jonathan looked back at Daniel. "Why did you come today?" Daniel gave a small smile. "Because your message said you wanted to talk about an old project. I didn't expect any of this." Jonathan exhaled slowly. "Neither did I." He walked back to his desk and opened the file again. "But one thing hasn't changed. The software you designed years ago is still the backbone of this company's biggest product. Without it, Carter Industries wouldn't be where it is today." Daniel shrugged slightly. "I built it because I loved creating things, not for credit." Jonathan looked at him with newfound respect. "That's exactly why you deserve it." He slid a document across the desk. "I'm offering you a position here, lead developer, full salary, benefits, and a research team." Daniel looked surprised. "Why?" Jonathan answered honestly. "Because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted, and because Lily deserves security." Daniel considered the offer carefully. Lily ran over and hugged his leg. "Daddy, are we going to work here?" Daniel chuckled softly. "Maybe." Jonathan watched them both, realizing something important in that moment. He could not rewrite the past. He could not undo the years he had lost with Emma. But perhaps he could still choose who he would become now. "Daniel," he said quietly, "I'm not asking to take your place in Lily's life. You're her father in every way that matters. But if it's possible, I would like the chance to be part of her future." Daniel studied his face carefully. This was not the confident CEO asking. It was a man asking for redemption. After a long moment, Daniel extended his hand. "Then start by being someone she can respect." Jonathan shook his hand firmly. Lily looked between them and giggled. "You two look like you just made a secret deal." Daniel smiled. "Something like that." Jonathan bent down again and said gently, "Lily, would you like to visit this office again sometime?" She grinned. "Only if there are snacks." For the first time in years, Jonathan Carter laughed. Outside, the storm had begun to fade, and sunlight slowly pushed through the clouds over the city skyline. In that quiet moment, 3 lives had begun a new chapter, not built on regret or secrets, but on honesty, forgiveness, and second chances. And sometimes the most powerful success story isn't about building a $1 billion company. Sometimes it's about becoming the person you should have been all along. If this story touched your heart and you want more powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next inspiring story.